Hey everyone, this is Mason Hutchison, and you're listening to Herb Rally. Today's episode is another edition of the Herbalist Hour, and this time I'm joined by Keia Lee Lewis. So Amanda and I took a trip to Marquette, Michigan about a month or so ago, and we visited three herbalists. We visited Leanne Hatfield with Seeds and Spores Farm. We visited my good friend Raj Vabel, which Raj was featured on the podcast a few episodes back, and we also visited Keia Lee Lewis, who is in today's episode. And Keia owns a herbal company called Botánica Quetzalli, and by blending the knowledge that Keia gained through her education in yoga, Ayurveda, herbalism, and energy healing with the wisdom of her cultural lineages, she strives to create unique products and healing services that she feels will benefit her community and beyond. So in this conversation, we chat about her origin story, what her Apache grandmother taught her about chaparral, working with her ancestors, her business Botánica Quetzalli, her relationship with smoke, corn, Libras, and a whole lot more. And we also have a couple of excellent guest questions from our mutual friend Kyle Denton with Tippecanoe Herbs based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So thank you, Kyle, for taking the time to write a couple of awesome questions for Keia. And before we get into the show, I want to tell you that registration is now open for Spice Rack Medicine Winter Online Series 2024, and that is created by Jade Alessandro with Milk and Honey Herbs, where kitchen medicine and herbalism meet. So this course covers the rich subject of kitchen medicine, demystifying herbalism and bringing it back into the home. You'll explore the amazing medicinal uses of culinary herbs and ways to capture their properties for medicine, both in herbal preparations and in our food. Among the most ancient of plants included in humans' diets, these plants are still much loved and utilized in modern herbalism today. You will delve deeply into the subject of food as medicine. Deep immunity, true health that comes from its core, is best built through nourishing foods and the tonic herbs. You'll learn how to eat right for your personal constitutions, understand the energetics of different foods, use the tonic herbs and medicinal mushrooms daily in the kitchen, and how to get the most nutritionally from the foods you eat. There will also, of course, be plenty of medicine making and cooking demos as well. So I will leave a link to Spice Rack Medicine Winter Online Series at the tippy top of today's podcast show notes. I've worked with Jade Alessandro a bunch throughout the years, and I really love her approach to herbalism and food as medicine, so definitely check this out. Registration is open now through December 13th, 2023, so if this is of interest to you, definitely check it out now. One more time, I will leave a link to the registration at the very top of today's podcast show notes. Also, before we get into the show, I got to thank our presenting sponsor, and that is Oshala Farm. So Oshala Farm is a beautiful and vibrant herb farm based in Southern Oregon. I've been there many times, and it is absolutely a gorgeous farm, and they grow and sell over 80 medicinal plants. So if you're looking to buy domestically grown, U.S. grown, organically grown medicinal herbs, look no further than Oshala Farm. That's Oshala Farm. OshalaFarm.com. You can learn more about all of the different herbs they grow, as well as the various tea blends, elixirs, body care products, and so on that they sell as well. So I highly recommend this company. I've known Elise and Jeff Higley for many years now, and if you do end up placing an order with them, would you mind letting them know that you found out about them through Herb Rally? That would be greatly appreciated. So one more time, huge thanks to our presenting sponsor, Oshala Farm. Also got to shout out our Herb Rally Schoolhouse members. Thank you so much for your membership. If you'd like to learn more about the Herb Rally Schoolhouse, go to herbrally.com/schoolhouse and use coupon code podcast to get your first 30 days for free. Okay, that's going to do it for my rambling today. Thanks so much for listening. I know you're going to love this episode with Keia Lee Lewis. We'll talk to you next time.
Welcome to the Herbalist Hour. This is where community gather, merging the power of people and flowers, the sweet and the bitter to the salty, the sour. Umami, it's time for the Herbalist Hour.
Welcome back to the Herbalist Hour. Today I'm really excited to have on Keia Lee Lewis. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. And can you tell us a little bit about where we're at, the city, the state, and the location?
Yeah, so we're in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, in Marquette to be exact. Where we're at right now is Barrel and Beam. It's a local brewery, and they have the Northwoods Test Kitchen here. They just got a grant from the state last year, And part of the grant was to invite small business owners in to use the kitchen if they needed a commercial kitchen and couldn't, didn't have the infrastructure themselves. And so as I started my journey of shifting from some part-time work and this business and going into this business full-time, I was able to rent out the kitchen space sometimes. So I actually craft all of the herbs here in their commercial kitchen.
Awesome.
And then we partner, and one of my teas is on their menu as an iced tea and also on their catering menu as well.
So we're drinking the iced tea right now.
Correct.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's delicious. It's got Earl Grey in it. Right? Is that true?
Earl Grey green, spearmint, and dried orange peel.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Delish. And the brand is Botánica Quetzalli, if I got that correct. Can you tell us what the name means?
Yeah, so in Latin cultures, a botanica is somewhere where people go for herbs, but also for spiritual guidance and other things that can, some have statues and ornaments and different things that people can use as they go on their spiritual journey or just a healing journey in general. So the goal eventually is to have a full-fledged botanica with all of those things in addition to herbs. And then Quetzalli is means feather or precious thing, and it's connected to the Quetzal bird, which is a Mesoamerican bird. It used to be so revered that the feathers were used as currency. Wow. It's also a symbol of freedom and is also tied to one of our guardians, Quetzalcoatl, who is the light bringer. He's the sun, connected to Venus, all of that goodly goodness. So,
love it.
Yeah.
So you're going to open a botanica. Is that's the goal? Is that going to be like an herb shop type of situation?
Yeah. So the goal is to have an herb shop, but also have a space where I can bring in different components of my cultures and other people, that live up here too, from the Finnish and Italian and English and all that kind of thing, and have just like a hybrid botanica where I have goods for folks to come in that are on, a spiritual journey, a healing journey, wherever they're at, and just have things for the town and for the community, and then online as well. So,
yeah, I'd like to hear more about your background. I know you have like an Apache grandma. Can you tell us more about like your journey to studying herbalism and all that?
Yeah. So, it's long. Long story.
Sure. We got an hour.
Yeah, that's true. So essentially, back in 2010, I graduated actually with my master's to work in museums. My initial goal was to be a museum curator. And as I graduated, it was the height of that financial crisis time.
Good times.
Yeah, I was like, oh yeah, great time to go into museums.
Right.
Totally. So I ended up staying in the service industry for a while and managing in hotels. And after a handful of years, I was getting really burnt out from that lifestyle. And I was like, okay, it's time to make a shift. It's time to make a change. And so I actually ended up applying for a PhD program, and I got put on a waiting list for it. And I just said to myself, there's something I need to be doing. I can't, it didn't happen, that's not the path I'm supposed to be going down. So let's see what else is out there. And I had been practicing yoga for about 10 years at that point, as a personal practice. And I just decided, it's time to delve a little bit deeper into this just for myself personally. And, I was getting it more into meditation and that kind of practice. And so I ended up connecting with a few different yoga schools in Milwaukee. And then I found Kanyakumari Yoga and Ayurveda School. And it just felt like home when I walked in. I really liked the woman who was instructing it, Sarah. She's a wonderful teacher. And so that started me down that path. And then I really enjoyed the philosophy and the teachings behind Ayurveda. And they had a health counselor and a practitioner program that you could go into. So I ended up staying on for the next year and got into their Ayurvedic health counselor program. And I ended up doing a work study in the apothecary. So I worked with a woman named Bryn who had trained in India, and that was where I really started working with the plants and getting to know them more from the Ayurvedic side. And they just called to me, and I kept getting, just the energy and getting to know them better and connecting with them. And I just thought, there's something here. There's something why I'm feeling this way. And so I started talking to my mom and grandma a little bit more. And my grandma was like, oh, you're a malupe, was a curandera, which is a traditional Mexican medicine person. And she goes, she, was the town midwife, and she was the herbalist. And she, in her house, had jars and jars of herbs. And people would come over and they'd tell her what's wrong, and she'd just go and grab all the things and put it together right there. But she always gave them yerba buena, which is in our family spearmint. It can be different types of mint depending on the region or the family. But for our family, it was spearmint. And so that's why I have spearmint in this tea that we're drinking right now, partially. So, so that was that all kind of started connecting. And I'm like, okay. So let's start delving deeper. And I started really, because both of my maternal grandparents are still alive. So I started kind of asking more questions of my mom. And my great-grandfather, my grandmother's dad, passed when she was about 2 years old. And his mom was Lipan Apache, on Mexican Lipan. And it was that unlocked a whole nother layer, because it's like, oh, well, how did we never talk about this before? And it's like, oh, well, we were told to not identify that way. We were told to identify as Mexican, and that was it, because at that time there was still, up until, when my great-grandfather was still born, there was still people going after Apache in Mexico, and, rounding people up, and all of those atrocities were happening still. So it kind of started that opening up of the family history, and then me delving in deeper and connecting with those sides of my lineage that had really been quieted down because of assimilation and because of, just the fear that comes up with, having to go underground, and the practices. And even curanderismo has gone for so many years, had to go underground, that wouldn't have been something that my great-great-grandmother, she would not have referred to herself in that way. She was just the town healer.
Right.
So yeah, those practices, our ancestral practices, went underground for so long, and they're starting to see a resurgence, and so many people are coming back to the medicine, and it's really beautiful and really amazing. And I've connected with several teachers, and it's just been a very magical experience.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Do you think this is in your blood to be a healer, or do you think it's your calling, or how do you kind of look at that? It sounds like your whole life kind of just transformed when you discovered this, and now it feels to me as if you're on your path now.
Yeah, I would agree with that. During yoga teacher training, and so for me, I don't necessarily teach at a studio or anything anymore. I've brought that practice back as a more personal practice. So the philosophies of yoga, the philosophies of Ayurveda, those practices, those traditions aren't mine. They aren't in my lineage. And yet I will always be so grateful to them, because they brought me back to my own cultures and my own lineages, which I feel happens a lot in the West. Is, we kind of fumble and bumble through life a little bit, and people are searching, they're seeking, they've become disconnected from their ancestry for a number of reasons. And when you make that connection and you come back to it, it's, in my opinion, very magical.
Totally.
So as I started delving in deeper and going into that lineage and going into that history of my own family and my people, like in general, I just started opening up in different ways. And in the yoga teacher training, before that even happened, I had mentioned previously working with the energy healing director. He also helped me because I ended up doing that apprenticeship with him for 3 years. And that even delved in deeper and opened me up in different ways, opened different sensitivities up. And I remember the first day he came to teach, it was energy healing for self-care for the yoga teachers, just so we could like learn how to hold space and we could learn how to take care of ourselves from an energetic standpoint as new teachers. And I just remember thinking, what is this? Like, what is this energy healing stuff? Okay. But then
Sounds a little woo-woo.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, you know, I personally feel there's a spectrum of woo.
Sure.
I refer to myself as woo light. And then
Woo light.
this is my personal spectrum is woo light, woo, woo woo, and then woo woo.
I'm woo curious.
That's fair. So that's what I was like, this is really woo. Like, what is this? But then my more linear pitta brain, to use an Ayurvedic reference, was much more like, okay, well, this is part of my class. And like, I have to do this homework. And, you know, so this is part of that. And as I started doing those self-care techniques, I was like, okay, I'm starting to feel something shifting. And then, so then, like I said, it went into that apprenticeship and that opened a lot of doorways for me and really opened me up. And then I finally felt like eventually as the years went on, you know, I've been doing this for about a decade at this point. So I still refer to myself as a budding herbalist, budding teacher.
It's good to keep that humility. I think,
Like there's so much I don't know still.
Totally.
But yeah, as I started getting deeper, I just was like, this is home. Like I felt home in my body and in my practice. After getting deeper and delving in more. So, yeah.
Just a quick break from the show to thank our presenting sponsor, Oshala Farm. Oshala Farm is a beautiful and vibrant certified organic herb farm based in Southern Oregon, where they grow and sell over 80 different plant species. The founders, Elise and Jeff Higley, have been longtime friends, so I highly trust their growing methods and ethics. You'll love the potency and vibrancy of all the herbs they have to offer. To learn more and purchase their herbs and other organic goods, head to oshalafarm.com. So thanks once again to Oshala Farm for sponsoring the Herbalist Hour. Now back to the show. Enjoy. Curious if you recall any of some of the self-care or self-protection practices that you had at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one that was especially potent was like a healing self chakra opening technique that he had. And that was one that he had recommended that we start doing daily. And that one was pretty potent. And then a lot of like breath work, using breath to kind of expand energy, check in on your own energy, and figure out what your own energy feels like. So that way, if there's someone else kind of impeding on you, you can understand like, oh, that's not mine, or that's not my emotion. I might have, been empathizing with someone and picked up on that, or Is there like something I could Google to figure out what this exercise is? It definitely seems like something that would be good for me, like a practice. I mean, after this, we could go through it if you want.
yeah, we can do that. That'd be great. I think that'd be helpful. Well, you do work with, like, say, ancestry and whatnot, and we have a guest question, as I told you before the interview, from our mutual friend Kyle Denton.
Oh, Kyle.
Tippecanoe Herbs, also previous guest on the Herbalist Hour.
Yes.
Let's see. So Kyle asks, you focus on ancestral reclamation, a foundational pillar of wisdom, and so cool. So as you are rooting in the Upper Peninsula, How are people responding to your teachings, and can you mention how they might personally adapt them to their own ancestry?
Oh, excellent question.
That's a great question.
Kyle.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kyle and I actually were at the same Ayurvedic school. Yeah.
That sounded familiar when you said that. Yeah.
So that's how he and I met. When I was in the yoga program, he was in the Ayurvedic program.
Gotcha.
And so we would do potluck lunches.
Okay.
And so that's how he and I started connecting. And then I just remember when he opened his first location in Milwaukee, I was like, this is awesome. Because, we nerded out about herbs. And he was always so supportive. He's like, when are you opening your shop? When are you going to start doing stuff? And so, yeah, he's great. I love him.
His shop is so beautiful. Have you been to the new one?
Yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah. It's gorgeous. Yeah. I send people there all the time.
That's awesome.
Because I still have a lot of friends and clients in Milwaukee too.
Sure.
But yeah, so the ancestral part, I'd say at this point, it's been now 21 years that I've been delving in and kind of reconnecting. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so it's been a journey. And as I've kind of grown in my own journey, at first it wasn't something I really talked about that much. And it wasn't something that I necessarily put out there. Yeah. Because I still wasn't sure what was going on and, what all of this was. And I am a person that needs to marinate on stuff a lot before I kind of put it out into the world or start talking about it. But now I'm sure if you go on my social media, you realize it's like pretty hot and heavy with the ancestor stuff.
Yep. We saw that.
Yeah. So yeah, as I opened up to that and started connecting more, it just started flowing a little bit more naturally. Mm-hmm. And just also, like you had mentioned prior, that like blood level, that DNA level. I personally feel there's something to that. A lot of other, teachers, herbalists, folks in this realm that we all live, work, and play in, have some kind of connection in their ancestry, to that space. And so I do think there is something to that, like DNA callback. Mm-hmm. Again, I can't exactly say what that is, but I just feel it. Even with making, putting herbals together for folks, if I know what their background or their ancestry is, adding that into the formula, even if it's, maybe has some more of an Ayurvedic approach or, different things, but understanding those kind of interactions energetically, if I know what their ancestry is and I can put a little bit of that into the mix, it just always seems to go deeper, and to have a deeper effect. And also sometimes people feel the effects sooner, if that makes sense. Yeah. So there is something there. Yeah. And for coming up here, so my husband and I moved up here a couple of years ago. We had been in Milwaukee for like the last decade probably. And we were just ready for, flies. Yeah. There's flies hanging out. But yeah, so we were just ready to kind of get out of the city. Sure. And he had grown up camping in the Iron Mountain area and really loved the UP. And so we came up here together, saw Lake Superior for the first time, and just really connected with the space. And so we were like, okay, let's do it. Let's move up here. And my dad is originally from Wisconsin. So when he retired from the Marine Corps, we moved back to Wisconsin in 99, which was a big shock for me as a military child living all over previously. Sure. But yeah, so we moved up here and I was still working part-time, and then doing this part-time. Before that, I had been working full-time and doing this kind of part-time. And the call and the push was just coming more and more of like, it's time.
Yeah.
Hey, it's time, and so I started seeing folks in person again, like a year and a half ago, a year or so ago, but also doing virtual things. And my husband and I sat down and talked, and we're like, okay, is it the time, it's time to do it? And then we both agreed. And so last winter solstice, I put my notice in. And then early January, actually here at Barrel and Beam, we did a launch party, and the community support that came out for that was just like, oh my gosh. And that's something really incredible, I think, about the people who live up here is like, they will come out to support. And that's really beautiful. And that's not something you necessarily have in different areas, small towns or big cities, So there's like definitely a magic up here where people are definitely into that, supporting each other and lifting each other up. And so that's been really wonderful to witness. And then at some of the markets this year, we did the farmers market for the first time. And so I wasn't sure. I'm like, okay, I'm coming out. I purposely did not name my company an English name. Like this is a throwback. I'm here because of my ancestors. I'm here because, of my Amalupe. She's passing this knowledge to me, and so I'm like, okay, but I made that conscious decision. And so I'm coming out into a community where there's not a ton of diversity. And it was really lovely to see all the people that came out, and people with really, genuine questions and good connections. And, it's interesting at a farmer's market because in the morning it's really busy. Everyone's going for their fruits and their veggies, and like stuff will sell out really fast. So it's right around 11 o'clock, we'd start seeing people coming in. And then it's like, because our booth, as my husband Alex said, was the hangout booth. Like you come in, you have a little tea sample, you ask some questions, people, share what they're going through and want to hold space for that. And so yeah, it's been really lovely. And then, at a few of the vendor events that we went to, there were some folks that came up, and they were like, one woman came in and was like, "Hecho en Mexico," like, "Oh, yerba buena, oh, Quetzalli," like all this stuff. And she shared with me, her family moved up to Minnesota when she was 7 from Mexico City, and, like this whole journey she was on. And she was just like, "I'm so happy that this is here." Yeah. And that has been echoed several times, to me throughout, of folks that live up here or are visiting up here. And we did a pop-up at a really lovely shop in Manistee called Drift Alchemy a few weeks ago.
That's around here?
Yeah, it's about a couple hour drive almost. But Mandy, the owner, is super cool. And yeah, we were just like, we met each other at one of the powwows, and she goes, "Come to my shop, let's do it." And the second person that came back to the little pop-up area was from downstate Michigan. And she looked at I had just dropped the sweatshirts, the Mi Vida es Mi Ofrenda. And she looks at them, looks at me, she goes, "You're Latina?" like, "Yeah, I'm Chicana." And she's like, "How did you get up here?" Like, "How did you get up here?"
Right.
But yeah, so it's been cool just to see that people open to it and just, really connecting. And yeah, it's been lovely.
You mentioned Mi Vida es Mi Ofrenda, and I was going to ask you about that anyway. So can you tell us what that means?
Yeah, so it's multi-layered, right? Yeah.
It's beautiful. Just listening to it, I love it. So
basically, the exact translation is "My life is my offering." And earlier this year, I had a little bit of a health issue, and I was having to go into the hospital, and I was nervous. That always, like, health scares do that. And so I was doing a lot of meditating. I was doing a lot of, praying, sending my prayers up on the sacred smoke. And I was just, connecting with my ancestors. I'm like, okay, like, help me, guide me, protect me. What am I supposed to do? What is the lesson here? And as I was in the hospital, that phrase just kept like coming into my mind. And I was like, okay, all right. My life is my offering. I get that. Yeah. Like,
did the phrase come to you? Like, had you heard it before, or was it like, did you feel like it was channeled into your brain, or?
I don't remember hearing it necessarily before. Maybe I did. I don't know.
Sure.
But it was just so strong in Spanish, like coming through.
Wow.
Like, and so I was like, yeah, my life is my offering. Like, I've been doing this whole reclamation for my ancestry and for these practices that were disconnected in my own family, and like bringing that back and helping heal this like female line. So I was like, in a way that like, yeah, that is, how I've been living, but having it in that phrase and being more conscious, like having that as a conscious tenant of, our pillar of my practice. And then also with Dia de Muertos, Day of the Dead, the ofrenda is where we put all of our ancestor pictures. And that's the ofrenda is, there's steeped with meaning, and it dates back to indigenous Mexican culture. And so across, Mexico and into the Southwest and different communities, you can start October 1st and it goes all through the month. The more known is, usually starting on October 26th and going through November 3rd. But, each community, each area kind of has their own way that they celebrate it. But the ofrenda is the main part. And again, that's steeped with meaning. And that's where we put our ancestor pictures. And that's where we sit with them for that time. And they come back and, we celebrate their life. We celebrate them and the gifts that they brought. And even our ancestors that had difficulty in this life, there's lessons in that too. So that, we invite them back to our homes. We invite them in because we are grateful to them and everything that they passed down to us. So that's the other layer to that is that as well. And when I was after the hospital, I, took some time off from seeing folks and did more of my own sacred care. And that phrase, again, just kept coming through. So I was like, okay, what is there something else that I'm supposed to be doing with this? And then it was like, put it out there for other people. So I worked with the woman, Lindsay Naylor, who did my logo and does all my labels. And she's an amazing woman and an amazing artist. And I just love her. And I told her my vision. I said, okay, so this happened, this is the phrase. I want it to kind of have the papel picado, which is, what we hang up during Dia de Muertos. And I'm like, I want that vibe to it. And so I gave her kind of like a rough idea. And then what she came back with was like, I start crying when I open the email. I'm like, oh yeah, this is beautiful. So yeah. And then when I put it out there, when I first did it as like a sweatshirt, and I, kind of explained the background, like my life is my offering. My life is my offering to my ancestors, but also the offering to like the generations to come, and reclaiming this knowledge and having this and sitting with my teachers so that this knowledge doesn't get lost. And then, eventually when my teachers deem me ready, then I'm going to be, teaching other people this as well. And, so I think there's just layers and layers and layers to it. And the community, I mean, not even just up here, I had people reaching out across the US about this, and they connected with it. And I said in the post, this is for everybody. Like, this is for anyone who feels the call to connect with their ancestral heritage. This is like our reminder to not lose these parts of ourselves, and just, keep pushing through the day to day, keep, whatever this world we're living in right now, and, trying to brush all this stuff off, and just coming back to home, coming back to roots, like all of that stuff. So
you mentioned smoke. Are there any plants that you work with smoke, or do you inhale it, or how do you work with smoke?
So typically I'll do, how I've been taught is to use those charcoal tabs. And then, copal is the main resin that we work with. But I'll also pull in like other plants. Like sometimes I'll do mugwort or lavender, different things, like just depending on what I'm called to. But copal is like the main thing that we use when we're doing like ceremony or prayer or anything like that. That's the main one that's used.
Nice. So. Can you tell us about your relationship with creosote bush, aka chaparral?
Yes. Yeah. So that was actually the first herb that I was taught. My Apache grandma teacher took me out for the first time when I was reconnecting, and there's actually like a lot of crossover with Apache herbs and curanderismo as well, which isn't super surprising with like the location and everything.
Where were you, by the way?
Arizona.
Oh, Arizona, gotcha.
Yeah, and so yeah, she took me out to that plant first, and we sat with the plant, and she taught me the traditional way of how you harvest it, how you connect with it, and like whenever you harvest a plant, she like gave me very specific instructions, like this is how we work with it, this is how you prepare it, all of that information. And so that plant specifically always holds a really special place in my heart, because it was the first one that I really, delved into from my own cultural space. And so, yeah, that one I just love so much. And it smells like because I do an infused oil with it, it just smells like the desert when it's raining. So it's just like that magic all over the place. But yeah, it's really lovely, and definitely is a good ally. So.
Amen. Well, before I forget, I want to ask Kyle's other question.
Oh, yes.
So we got to get to that. So this one also comes from Kyle Denton from Tippecanoe Herbs. And he says, are there any plants that you are finding in your local biosphere that your ancestors may not have worked with, yet still carry the spirit of their medicine? Actually, that is new.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I also want to say I don't think I answered his second question of the first one, which was how folks can connect with their own, make these practices their own. Yeah. So I went to school to be a museum curator. I'm a history nerd. I love history. Yeah. So I actually was a religious studies and anthropology minor, so I actually know a fair amount about different lineages and different, not necessarily the rooted practices, but just enough to be dangerous, maybe.
Sure. There you go.
But in that, so that part of my life, gaining that knowledge has actually helped me working with folks now, where we can connect some dots, and I can at least point people in the right direction of, hey, you have some Celtic lineage, start looking in these areas. Or at this point, I've connected with a lot of people, so I can connect them with a person who might be practicing more of a Celtic, herbal practice, or, Celtic spirituality, or, so that kind of thing. So if I try to always help folks and like point them in the direction of things that I know are like good resources and quality people to connect with or to start learning from. And if I can't, then I'll try to reach out to my community of folks and just say like, hey, does anyone know about this? And I think that's just so important. As social media can be a great tool, but there's also a lot of myths and disinformation out there. And so I just want people to be safe and just connect in like with some quality teachers if they can. So
Sure. Well, I do have 23% Scottish ancestry and 23% Irish ancestry. Do you have any resources of where I could start?
Well,
my own selfish curiosity.
I did see that you interviewed Asia Suler.
Yep,
Yeah,
totally.
She has some great resources, I would say.
Oh, yeah.
Has some of her online courses and blogs. Are
I'm
really
blown
great.
away by her work. So I definitely
she's
need to dive
phenomenal.
even deeper with her. Yeah, totally.
So I definitely recommend. Like she's honestly one of the people that I point folks to. And then, I have a friend up here that I could connect you with.
That'd be great. Also an herbalist, or?
She does more, not as much with herbs, a little bit, but she does more like of the Celtic, like spiritual practices.
That's rad. Yeah, I'd love to be connected.
Yeah.
Sweet.
And she's from England originally.
Okay.
Moved over here 6 years ago or so.
All right.
So, yeah.
Well, I'm not going to let you off the hook. The question about Kyle's plants around here that still carry some.
So interestingly enough, the plants so how I've been taught is that the plant will come to you or like show itself to you. So in my practice, people might consider it a little bit more like folk herbalism. Yeah. And so that's how I, make things is very much like what pops up around me.
Sure.
Everything so far that has popped up is actually also in traditional Mexican medicine, or in like the Inde, the Apache way. Obviously, like we don't have creosote bush up here.
Right. Not really a desert.
Yeah. But for the herbs that have popped up, like the first year at our house, a giant mullein plant appeared, like in Curanderismo, it's called Gordo Lobo. Like, so I'm like, oh, okay. And, so I worked with that.
You said Lobo, is that something about wolf?
Yeah, the fat wolf.
The fat wolf, okay. Oh, Gordo.
Yeah.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, so, so like that. And then most recently, it was actually right around the fall equinox, a wild Cosmo bush like popped up in my yard, and I'm like, and at first I was like, what? Like I just saw a really vibrant pink flower when I was walking our dog back to the house, and I'm like, okay, pink flower, like what are you over there? And then I went and I looked into it more, and it's like also known as Mexican aster. And I was like, okay, where did you come from, little ancestor flower? So
that was around here?
Yeah.
I wonder if that's the one you picked earlier. Is it blooming right now?
Yeah.
She showed me a flower. It looked kind of pinkish. It was kind of weedy.
Yeah.
And she showed it to me. I was like, it kind of looks like aster to me.
Yeah. So there's the cosmos. Yeah. So I made a flower essence with it on the full moon. Because I'm like, okay, what are you here for? So, I always try to work with the plants myself first.
Sure.
Just to get, the message, and also ask, are you here for me? Are you here for the community? Am I allowed to work with you? Those kinds of questions. But, so far everything I've had appear, is also like in lineage, which is interesting. I had a bunch of wild yarrow growing in my yard, and so.
I saw that you also recently grew your first corn.
Yes.
And I was just kind of hoping you could tell us about your relationship with corn as an herb.
Yeah, so I'm actually like, this was, first year I've done it. And I'm just kind of starting to explore it, and explore that relationship, because that is, such an ancestral plant. So I was kind of successful this year. I got two ears of corn. So it was a weird growing season up here. It was very cool, and then we didn't have too many hot days this summer. So so I'm still exploring that one. Yeah.
Do you have hopes and dreams for what you might do with more corn in the future? Do you want to make like masa or anything like that?
That would be lovely to do. Yeah, I have to. I'm trying to get my great aunt's tamale recipe. So waiting for that. And then, so that would be great. I'd love to do that. But I'm not really sure. Yeah, I just kind of flow with it and see what the plants want to tell me.
Totally.
And then go from there. So I don't know. TBD, I'll let you know.
Very good. So we're gonna do a segment called Explain That Gram. And this is a segment I stole directly from a show on YouTube called Hot Ones. And basically I'm going to show you a picture from your Instagram at Botánica Quetzalli. So give her a follow. And basically I'll show you the picture and you can tell us the greater story as to what's going on here.
Okay. Oh yeah, the witches. That was in Scotland. So
oh wow.
Yeah,
nice.
It was in Edinburgh.
Okay.
My husband, Alex, is Norse, Scottish, and I think French Canadian ancestry.
Okay.
And neither of us had ever been to Scotland. So we went there for our honeymoon. We actually went to the Isle of Lewis first, and it was really beautiful. And we ended in Edinburgh. And there's this really big castle that's like right in the middle of it. And that specific picture, so a friend of mine who also has Scottish ancestry and loves Scotland, she told me, she's like, there's this witch's wall. You have to go check it out while you're there. And it's like very unassuming. And she kind of told us the general area where it was, and we couldn't find it at first. And so, there's like the big castle looming over you, and everyone's going to that, and you're like, okay, where is it? And we found it, and it's actually somebody built a fountain and a little plaque to commemorate all of the people who were burned for witchcraft, and calling out that atrocity essentially. And so people will come to this fountain and leave little like trinkets and gifts and that kind of thing. So yeah, again, just like that, those reminders I think are so important to look back on, like what happened, because that will help us inform how we live our lives today. And we don't want those kinds of things to repeat themselves. So
as you said, you're a history buff.
Yeah.
Do you kind of identify as a witch as well?
I mean, like, you'll say it, I'm sure. Yeah. I don't know. Bruja,
Oh, yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, like get into the witchy woo. But I think with that word, there comes so much weight,
Totally.
And again, like, it's...
Some people might view it as like derogatory, but in our community, at least the herbal community, it's almost like celebrated and kind of in vogue.
For sure.
So
yeah, there is, and there's so many like connotations put with it, and like especially women. Like I was reading something recently, and it was just like a woman who is powerful, a woman who speaks her mind, a woman who people say talks too much or is too emotional. Like all of these things, anything that like a woman does that makes someone uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. She is then like labeled as a witch almost, like, and that still happens today. Totally. Like, so there is that negative connotation to it. I think there's also the level of kind of capitalism that's come into the spiritual space. We're seeing more and more. And so people kind of like owning it in more of a silly way, or like, oh, this is popular. So totally. Like, I'm witching, like that kind of stuff. And that can be like, fun and like for people to like kind of reconnect in that way. But that's where you also come in, for me personally, with that historical side is like, okay, if you like reclaim it, call yourself whatever you would like, but understand the weight of it and understand like what's behind that word. And if you're going to carry that word as, you know, something you identify as,
Right.
then you're carrying all these women and men that were, you know, murdered, that were burned at the stake. And so how are we going to like bring that forward and give justice to that and embody this in a way that it comes into the community and is, you know, a power.
Yeah.
Right.
Seems like a lot of your work, you're very intentional. You use respect. You use a lot of introspection. I love that. I love that. If you're going to use the term witch, have some respect for it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you're going to be carrying the weight of all that, like you said. So well put. So you wear a lot of different hats as a healer, and I'm just kind of curious if you could offer the budding herbalist any advice on making it as an herbalist in this world.
Ooh. It's a good question.
Could be broad, could be specific, whatever you want to make of it.
So I feel like I have, you know, folks that come in, community members that will come see me one-on-one, or will come to the women's circles that I hold and different things. And kind of what I was mentioning earlier is, you know, online there can be a lot of like myths and disinformation, and I'm seeing that more and more. So I'm always grateful when people ask questions or reach out. And what I usually try to tell people is to find a good teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Online courses are great, and I think there's some that are out there that are wonderful foundations. In my personal opinion, that doesn't take the place of an in-person teacher.
Yeah.
So, you know, I've done the Ayurvedic track. I've taken online courses, but then sitting with my grandma teacher, and then also I have another teacher in New Mexico, Bernadette Torres. She's also known as Mama Shabeta. She's been practicing for so many years, and is going out and spending time with her is just, again, like, I felt like I did a year's worth of work in a week. You know, that kind of stuff. So whenever possible, I just try to tell people, you know, like, look into these people that, you know, you may be interested in sitting with. Look who their teachers were. Look at their practice. Does their action match their words?
Mm-hmm.
You know, feel it out. Go with your intuition. You know, we've all had some difficult or maybe not so great experiences. Those are learning opportunities for sure. So that's kind of always where I try to encourage folks to go if they're dipping their toes in and they kind of want to get a little deeper. And
Totally.
Yeah.
Very practical. I like that.
Yeah.
So why don't we wrap up with a couple fun questions?
Okay.
You posted on your Instagram something about Libra season. So here come the Libras acting like nobody else's birthday exists. And it's funny. So happy birthday, by the way.
Thank you.
And I'll just say today's my birthday.
Oh, happy birthday.
So I'm a Libra as well. I'm just kind of curious, what do you mean by that? Because I was just talking to Amanda about that, and it's just birthdays are funny, and it is funny when it's like our season or whatever.
Yeah.
We get so like excited about it or whatever. And I'm just kind of curious what you think about that.
Yeah, it was definitely like in jest.
Totally. And by the way, was that last picture of you smoking a cigar and drinking a cocktail or something?
It was
badass.
At my sister's wedding in New Orleans.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
yeah, it was a stogie and a bourbon.
It's legit.
So I feel like that just encompasses the energy of Libra season.
Totally.
For me. Like, this is my boss time. But yeah, so I don't know, it's just funny. Other Libras I know, like, just get excited about, you know, like you said, the season. And a lot of people do.
Fall. Everyone loves fall.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's that too.
Yeah.
It's like, it's the fall.
Yeah.
It's, you know, Libra season starting. And then, but it's funny because what I found too, and there was like some other memes about this as well, which is, you know, you want to plan like a big thing, but then at the last minute you're like, oh, but I just want to stay home or something.
Right.
You know?
Totally.
So yeah, I think, but you know, also like in Libra season, I feel like Libras are pretty vivacious and outgoing, and just kind of floating through the ethers a little bit. So
I was the shyest kid when I was younger, and I just felt, as I got older, it was in me to be like outgoing and talk to random strangers. It probably annoys Amanda how much it doesn't. I'm always talking to strangers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
that's what my husband says. He's always, Alex, he's like, yeah, when we're out and about, I know, and it's like you're in the flow because you're just talking to people and you're making connections, and you're like, oh, and then this person and this person. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you.
And at the farmer's market, it's perfect for you.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. Kind of to close things out, you were telling us off camera a story about being in Scotland and singing. And I was just hoping you could share that story for the audience, because I thought that was beautiful and amazing. So
sure, yeah. Like I said, we were in Scotland for our honeymoon. That's on Alex's ancestry. Neither of us had been there. I had always wanted to go also, just because you hear all the magical stories about Scotland. And driving through the Highlands was amazing. But then, so wherever we go, even like when we came up here for the first time, we always do a little gratitude land ceremony, thanking the land and the waters for allowing us to be here, and, giving thanks to the indigenous population of, the land that we're on. And so we found this little pebbly beach. It was also during a very heavy rain that all of a sudden started. And, Alex has his way that he does stuff, and then I have mine. And so I was feeling really called to sing a specific water song. So to connect with the waters and, do a healing water song. And as I started singing, there was, you could kind of see something in the water, but it was like, in the flow. And all of a sudden the seal popped up just like out of, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a seal. What's happening? But then I'm in ceremony. And so I keep flowing, and the seal just stayed there bobbing in the water, staring into my soul, it felt like, as I was singing this song. And then as soon as I was done and closed out, it just swam away, and I was like, okay, Selkie, see you next time.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for taking the time with us on the Herbalist Hour. Where would you like to send folks to learn more about you and your work?
Yeah, my Instagram or Facebook, Botánica Quetzalli, is a great place to connect. And I also have a website if you want to look into some of my products a little bit more.
Also your virtual offerings or in-person offerings as well?
Yep, yeah. I do in-person one-on-ones at Sage and Spry, which is downtown Marquette. But I also do virtual offerings as well, herbal consults, coaching, and energy healing. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks once again for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was great.
Yeah, that was awesome. Well, we'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye. And that's going to do it for today's episode. Thanks so much for listening to the Herb Rally podcast. If you'd like to hear more from us here at Herb Rally, we now have a text message community, believe it or not. Basically, it's just updates from us. We send about 1 to 7 texts per week, notifying you about new events, videos, courses, podcasts. You get the idea. It's pretty much like our email newsletter, just in text form. So if you'd like to receive text messages from Herb Rally, just text JOIN, that's JOIN, to the number 541-256-2895. Again, that's JOIN to number 541-256-2895. And to stop receiving texts, that's easy too. Just text STOP to the same number. It'll opt you out immediately. Okay, thanks again for listening. Have a great rest of your day.